On the surface, Fusion follows the story of an alien invasion. Delving deeper, there's a whole layer of storytelling going on that is usually missed by the casual player. Today, we'll be discussing what I consider Fuse's kryptonites, magic, and imagination. So to start, let's begin with imagination. The first instance of imagination having an effect on fusion matter is at the Battle of Tech Square. Yep, that's right. We're starting at the literal beginning of the game. Future Tech Square, the game's tutorial to get us used to the controls and how missions work, gives us an insight to what nanos are and how to gain them. Nanos are the combination of three things: an item that has a person's DNA, fusion matter, and the player's imagination. It is explicitly stated that the imagination purifies the fusion matter, and is probably the reason why some of the nanos look different from their NPC counterparts. The nanos are proven to be powerful against the fusions, whether they're using leech, drain, damage to hurt an enemy, or heal and revive to keep the player on their feet. The nanos are so important to the story that their schematics are sent back in time to an earlier point in the timeline. Their inclusion in the fight helped turn the tide against Fuse, which anyone who has played the game already knows. Imagination's ability to repel fusion matter is explored with the cul-de-sac's cardboard fortress. The cardboards were donated by Madame Foster over from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, making them imaginary cardboard boxes. The fortress is so capable of repelling the monsters that several characters have commented on it and noted how badly the monsters wanted to get in. A later mission, Imaginary Reinforcement, also has the player reinforce the fortress with imaginary toothpaste, which confounds the two Ed boys but keeps the fortress standing. The next time imagination gets a starring role is in Beautification Mutation. Billy first has the player take a refused poster and then has the player go back and paint over the posters. This upsets the monsters and makes them even more destructive. Wilt has the player remove the paint because the posters were made by imaginary friends over at Foster's, imbuing them with imaginary energy and therefore subduing the monsters. It's upsetting that the game made this a plot point, but it was never expanded upon in other areas. Not even Mandark, who is setting up a lab over by Foster so he can study the effect of imaginary energy, mentions this or tests it for himself. Fusions of imaginary friends are also shown to act differently. Fusion Blue didn't attack anyone, although he did hold Blue hostage, in imaginary fusions. It simply wanted to be adopted, proclaiming itself to be an imaginary friend. Fusion Eduardo helped point the player to its lair in a fusion by the sea. Fusion Coco dropped an egg in Mystery of the Meteor, giving the player access to Fusion Mac's portal. The only fusions who seemed unchanged was Fusion Wilt, Fusion Mr. Harriman, and Fusion Cheese. The three fusions acted hostile like every other fusion. While the main imaginary friends play a role in the game, whether they're part of a guide's mission or found out to be the reason Battle of Heroes Hollow was lost, the most important friend is Coco. Her egg-laying ability makes her a target for Fuse and his minions who want to use her powers in their favor. For this reason, Mac goes to great lengths to keep her safe. A majority of their missions up at the outpost is centered on this plot point. The next important imaginary friend would be Runty, although we don't learn he's an imaginary friend until late game when Billy offers him up to the player to help infiltrate Fuse's lair. And imaginary energy is flat out referred to as his weakness in Part 4 of Control Center Assault and exploited in Part 2 of Fuse No More when Runty is used to drop Fuse's shields, and in Part 3 of the same mission line when the player uses their own imagination to break through his protective shields. Since Fuse No More is the last mission line in the game, this is the last time we hear about imaginary energy's effects on Fuse. It is a storyline that has been here from the very beginning and finished up right to the end. Shifting gears, we need to look back at magic's role in the story. Some of you may already have a grasp on its importance if you've played the game or watched any of my videos where I completely lose grasp on reality. To begin, magic doesn't play a role in the future. The only being related to magic still around is Jack, although he doesn't use his katana that much. He did use it to cut some fusions down in the opening cutscene, but it was just treated as a regular strike rather than anything like super magically done. Where magic's influence begins to show, unless you have Double D as your guide, is in one spooky fusion. Him's magic mirror was shown to have the ability to repel fusion monsters. While it could be written off as being possessed by a demon, the fact that it is explicitly referred to as a magic mirror means that it is its magical properties that makes it a repellent, not that it is demonic. Around this time, we also learn about the Thromnobulars, wishing skulls that are treated like a hide-and-seek NPCs, so they have little effect on the story, except for the last one. The 9th skull allows the player to make a wish, giving the player some items. Despite the closed circuit set not being the most powerful items in the game, it's the thought that counts on the skulls providing an item that is, in their words, powerful and enchanted. Now, for those of you who did choose Double D, you were introduced to his entire mission line, the Crazy Brain Candy. I've already done a video detailing this mission line, so check it out to see the full story. Basically, this storyline was one long keep out of Fuse's hands because if he got a hold of it, he could wipe out the resistance. Luckily, Jack helps the player destroy all the candy, ending this magical item's existence. Possibly. Speaking of magical objects Fuse wants, it's time to talk about some magical charms and totems. No, not those totems. We'll get to that in a moment. Over the course of the game, there seems to be 3 charms that exist. The first charm, over in Scotsman's Best Friend, is a Runic Charm that is basically an alarm clock. Fuse is attempting to use the charm to awaken a sleeping beast under the Townsville Park. Where he got his hands on this and how he knew is unknown, but maybe he has an ability to quickly learn new languages. The Runic Charm is dropped in Leaky Lake's fusion matter waters, implying that Fuse won't send his forces after it because of how deep it dropped. Another charm is the Charm of Reincarnation. Hex has the player search for it, believing that it was the cause of Number 3's nano mission where her family of Rainbow Monkey toys was brought to life. The player never finds the charm, but they do learn that Fuse has been using arcane magic on his monsters. After defeating Fusion Hex, the player retrieves the magical powder that Fuse had been using to beef up the monsters in that area and uses it to make their own nano. The third is the Hypnotic Charm that the player retrieves during the Mojo Guide mission post-hypnotic infection. The player gives it to Mandy, who has the player use it on some of Mojo's own monkey minions in order to keep them from fulfilling his orders. It does get stolen at some point by Fuse because, like the Crazy Brain Candy, a Hypnotic Charm would be handy against the resistance. The player gets it back before it can be used, but its power was corrupted and so it was destroyed. More items Fuse wants are the 3 totems: the Totem of Ectonurite, Totem of Victor, and Totem of Lebon. For everyone who is knowledgeable in Ben 10, you'll recognize these names and likely have an image of Ben's aliens when you heard their name. We learn about these totems in 2 nano missions, where it's revealed that energy was put into these totems and Fuse was attempting to use them for his benefit. The player is able to grab these and hand them over to a sacked agent, where we never hear from them again. They're never brought up again, not even with Ben, who is all about keeping alien tech out of Fuse's hands, and considering the totems relate to alien DNA and his Omnitrix, you'd think he'd have more interest than an email saying where to hand them off, but the 3 totems disappear and are presumed safely locked away. Dexter's guide missions even get in on the mystical arts. His mission storyline is finding the missing heroes, which blends the use of technology and magic. While he has a power level tracker used to pinpoint Buttercup, he also relies on Grimm to find magical artifacts in an effort to find the missing heroes. Later on, Jack has the player collect the warrior's crest from the Really Twisted Forest. We learn that this crest contains the souls of great warriors and that its original home was the Hall of Heroes at the ruins. Its energy was drained, but Juniper easily fixes that. The player then transfers the energy into the power level tracker, boosting its abilities and letting us find Demungo, who is suspected to have collected the souls of the missing heroes. Since Demungo mentions that it was actually his fusion counterpart that did it, Jack has the player retrieve a sacred vessel to get the souls back, which the player does. Among the souls that were rescued and returned is a shadow of Aku, which panics Dexter and Jack both. After retrieving the shadow, the player goes to the Dark Tree to have it destroyed. And with the mention of the Dark Tree, I think this is a great time to get to the part of the video you knew was coming. I swear I didn't write this up just to have another excuse to mention topics I've already covered, but it can't be helped. I won't go too deep into the Magic Tree, the Dark Tree, the Book of Prophecy arc, or the Master Weapon arc because I've already talked about them in prior videos. I'll simply mention them here because they are magical and their presence affects fuse. The Magic Tree has the ability to purify fusion matter, just like imagination does when making a nano, although he has been shown to be capable of corruption. However, since this was the Dark Tree's infection, it's possible that the added bonus of magic hurt the Magic Tree. We also see that the Magic Tree is important to Fuse, making him yet another character Fuse wants to capture. On the flip side, the Dark Tree is shown to be heavily infected. Its roots stretch out across the earth, infecting whatever it can, such as the Magic Tree. However, it is also shown to be powerful enough to destroy a Shadow of Aku, putting it on the same level as Jack's katana. The Book of Prophecy introduces the Totems, which when activated generates a shield to protect the Earth. This is a major challenge to Fuse, who wants to be able to continue sending his forces down without interference. Once it is activated, Fuse attempts to have the Magic Tree kidnapped and the Totems turned off, but the player thwarts him on both accounts. The player also obtains the Power of Destiny, a power that the player keeps up until the end of the game. The Master Weapon arc is about monsters being turned into weapons, all of it because they were actually berserk monsters thanks to the ancient warrior spirits provoking them. Like the Totems, the Master Weapon was prophesized, and once it is forged, it joins up with the player, making the player the actual Master Weapon. This gives them the strength to fight and defeat Fuse, ending this magical storyline. Well, I hope this was a fun episode for you all. I'm sure you're tired of me talking or mentioning the Magic Tree, Book of Prophecy, and so forth, but I really can't help it. When writing up the story arcs across the 4 regions, I was noticing how imagination and magic was being used, and it was just so much fun putting it all together. So thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.